Rain hammered the glass like bullets while Manhattan drowned below. Inside the penthouse, Nico DeLuca, the Mafia boss whose name made politicians wet themselves, sat across from his wife at their anniversary dinner, 10 years together, 5 years married. He didn't even look up from his phone, just kept negotiating territory deals while their food went cold. Then his captain made a joke. "Ignore your wife long enough and she'll leave you, boss." Nico laughed. "If she does, I'll marry again." The words hung in the air like gun smoke. Serena didn't scream, didn't throw anything. She just slipped off her wedding ring beneath the candlelight and walked out into the storm. Hours later, Nico came home to silence. Her paintings were gone, her phone abandoned by the sink, and her wedding ring lying alone under the dining table. For the first time in years, the most dangerous man in New York felt genuine fear. If you want to see how far a mafia king will fall, to get back the only woman who ever loved him before the violence consumed his soul, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Buccetti. The penthouse smelled like expensive wine and failure. Nico DeLuca barely registered the scent anymore. He'd stopped noticing most things about the sprawling Manhattan fortress he called home, the imported Italian marble, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, the original Picasso his decorator insisted would complete the space. None of it mattered. Symbols of power were just that. Symbols. The real power lived in his phone, in the encrypted messages that never stopped coming, in the network of killers and corrupt officials who answered when he called. Tonight was supposed to be different. Their anniversary. 10 years since Serena Vale walked into his life. 5 years since he'd made her his wife in a ceremony that shut down 3 city blocks and required police escorts for the guest list alone. She'd worn white lace that day, smiled like she believed in forever. Nico remembered thinking she looked too good for him, too clean, too untouched by the blood money and backroom executions that built his empire. But he'd wanted her anyway, wanted her with the same ruthless certainty he applied to hostile takeovers and territorial expansion. So he'd made her his, and then he'd stopped paying attention. The dining table was set perfectly, candles burning low, her favorite wine breathing in crystal decanters. Serena had done all of it herself, sent the chef home early, arranged the flowers, chosen the music drifting softly through hidden speakers. She'd even worn the emerald dress he'd bought her last Christmas, the one that made her dark hair look like silk against her pale shoulders. Nico wore his usual armor. Black suit, white shirt, no tie. Phone welded to his ear. "Tony, I don't give a fuck what the Colombians think," he said, watching rain streak down the windows instead of looking at his wife. "We own the ports. They want access, they pay our price, or they swim home." Serena sat perfectly still across from him, hands folded in her lap, expression carefully blank. She'd mastered that look over the years. The invisible wife. The beautiful ghost haunting the edges of his empire. Tony laughed on the other end of the line. "You're going to start a war, boss. Let them start it. We'll finish it." Nico swirled his wine without drinking it. "What about the shipment from Marseille? Delayed. Port authorities sniffing around." "Then make them stop sniffing." "How much?" "However much it takes." Nico finally glanced at Serena. She was staring at her plate, untouched food going cold. "Listen, Tony, I need to eat." "Wait, boss, Frankie's got something." Sounds of shuffling. Another voice joining the call. "Nico, we got a problem with the Brooklyn territory. The Russians are pushing into Red Hook." Serena's fork moved fractionally, a tiny adjustment that meant nothing to anyone who wasn't watching. But Nico had learned her language once, back before the Empire swallowed everything. That small gesture meant disappointment, resignation. He ignored it. "How many Russians?" Nico asked. The conversation spiraled from there. Territory disputes, revenue projections, a judge who needed convincing, an informant who needed silencing, the kind of operational minutia that kept empires running and enemies buried. Serena waited. She was good at waiting. Years of practice had turned her into something almost zen-like. While Nico orchestrated violence and negotiated power, she existed in the negative space around him. Present, but invisible. Beautiful, but unseen. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. The candles burned lower. The wine sat untouched in both their glasses. Through the phone, Nico heard his captains laughing about something, background noise from whatever restaurant or strip club they'd gathered in for the night, the familiar soundtrack of his real life. "Boss, you still there?" Tony's voice crackled with amusement. "You're awfully quiet. Usually you're halfway through a threat by now." "I'm listening," Nico said. "Sure you are." More laughter. "Careful, Nico. Ignore your wife long enough and she'll leave you." The other men howled. Inside joke. They all had wives or girlfriends they barely saw, women who'd learned to accept the scraps of attention thrown their way between criminal enterprises and mistresses. Nico found himself smiling, cold, automatic. "If she does," he said, "I'll marry again." The words came out casual, throwaway, a joke for the boys. But across the table, Serena went absolutely still. Not the invisible stillness she usually inhabited. Something else. Something final. Nico watched her face shift. No drama, no tears. Just a small, almost imperceptible closing, like watching a door lock from the inside. She reached down slowly, twisted her wedding ring, the platinum band with the inscription he'd chosen, "Sempre tua, always yours," and slipped it off her finger. The sound of metal touching porcelain was louder than gunfire. Serena placed the ring carefully beside her wine glass, stood, smoothed her emerald dress. "Serena," Nico started. She walked past him without a word. Not to the bedroom, not to the bathroom, straight to the front door. "Fuck, boss, you still there?" Tony's voice buzzed in his ear. Nico turned in his chair watching Serena pull on her coat. "I'll call you back." "Everything okay?" "I said I'll call you back." He ended the call, stood. The apartment suddenly felt too large, too empty. "Where are you going?" His voice came out harder than intended. Command, not question. Serena pulled the door open. Rain roared in from the hallway. The storm had gotten worse. Thunder cracked somewhere over the East River. "Serena," sharper now. "I'm talking to you." She paused in the doorway, didn't turn around. For a moment, Nico thought she might say something, scream at him, throw something, give him an enemy he could fight. Instead, she just stepped into the storm and disappeared. The door clicked shut behind her with awful finality. Nico stood in the silence, phone still in his hand, the penthouse suddenly cavernous around him. Through the windows, Manhattan glittered like broken glass. Somewhere below, his wife was walking into the night without protection, without security, without anything. His first instinct was anger. How fucking dare she walk out on him? Did she have any idea what he could do? Who he was? The power he wielded? Then the anger faded into something uglier. Confusion. When was the last time Serena had defied him? When was the last time she'd done anything except exist quietly in the background of his life? Nico looked at the table. The cold food, the dying candles, the wedding ring lying beside her untouched wine like a small platinum accusation. His phone buzzed, Tony calling back, probably wondering what the hell happened. Nico sent it to voicemail. The silence in the penthouse was profound, not the peaceful quiet of solitude, something heavier, the absence of something essential. He picked up her wedding ring, studied the inscription that had seemed romantic once upon a time. Sempre tua, always yours. But when was the last time he'd actually treated her like she was his? When was the last time he'd looked at her, really looked at her, instead of through her? The question sat in his chest like a bullet he couldn't dig out. Nico pulled out his phone, pulled up her contact. Serena's photo stared back at him from 2 years ago. Some charity gala. She was smiling in the picture, but her eyes looked tired even then. He called. Straight to voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. Again. Nothing. The first thread of actual concern wormed through his anger. Serena never turned off her phone. Never. She was too conditioned to being available, being reachable, being the perfect Mafia wife who answered when her husband called. Nico grabbed his keys, his gun, his coat. The elevator ride down felt like drowning. Outside, the storm was biblical. Rain coming down in sheets, wind howling between skyscrapers. His driver stood beside the black SUV, soaked through. "Did you see Mrs. DeLuca leave?" Nico demanded. "Yes, boss. Maybe 20 minutes ago. She walked." "Which direction?" "East, toward the park." Nico climbed into the SUV. Find her. They cruised through Manhattan like sharks hunting in dark water. Rain hammered the windshield. The driver navigated slowly, carefully, both of them scanning the sidewalks for any sign of Serena. Nothing. She'd vanished into the city like smoke. After an hour of searching, Nico's phone rang. Marco, his head of security. Boss, Mrs. DeLuca isn't at any of her usual places. Gallery's closed. Cafe where she meets her friends is empty. I checked her sister's apartment in Brooklyn. Nobody's seen her. Keep looking, Nico said. You want me to call it in? Get the cops involved? No cops. Handle it quietly. He hung up, stared out at the rain-soaked streets. Somewhere in this city, his wife was walking alone, unprotected, angry, and he had no fucking idea how to find her. By 3 a.m, Nico gave up and went home. The penthouse was exactly as he'd left it. Candles burned down to nothing. Food congealed on expensive china. Her wedding ring still sitting beside her wine glass like evidence at a crime scene. He walked through the apartment slowly, looking for clues, signs, anything. Her phone sat on the kitchen counter, just sitting there. She'd left it behind intentionally. Nico picked it up. No password. She'd never hidden anything from him. He scrolled through recent messages. Nothing unusual. Conversation with her sister about meeting for lunch next week. A reminder about a dentist appointment. Text from her gallery manager about an upcoming exhibition. Normal. Mundane. The digital footprint of someone who existed quietly on the edges of his violent world. He moved to her art studio, the room she'd claimed when they first moved in together, the space she disappeared into for hours, painting or sketching or whatever the hell she did to fill the endless empty hours while he ran his empire. The studio was unnaturally clean, not the comfortable mess of a working artist, sterile, organized, like she'd been preparing for something. Nico started opening drawers, looking through cabinets, and that's when he found them. Prescription bottles. Hidden in the back of her supply cabinet behind tubes of paint, antidepressants. The dates on the labels went back 11 months. 11 fucking months his wife had been medicating herself for depression and he hadn't noticed. The realization hit him like a baseball bat to the skull. He kept searching, found more. Medical records tucked into a portfolio case, appointment summaries, lab results. And then he saw it. A hospital discharge summary from 10 months ago. Emergency room visit. Hemorrhaging. Incomplete miscarriage. Patient treated and released. Follow-up recommended with OBGYN. The words blurred together. Miscarriage. Patient. Serena DeLuca. Date. 11 months ago. Nico's hand shook. He read it again, then again. The clinical language turning into something horrifying the more he absorbed it. 11 months ago, Serena had lost a baby. Their baby. And she'd gone through it alone. He tried to remember where he'd been 11 months ago. What crucial piece of business had required his attention? What deal or war or negotiation had been more important than his wife hemorrhaging in a hospital emergency room? Then he remembered. Colombia. Cartel negotiations. 3 weeks in Medellin hammering out distribution agreements and territory arrangements. He'd been unreachable by design. Sat in a fortress in the mountains with no phone service while Serena lost their baby alone. The medical report slipped from his fingers. Nico sank into her desk chair, the one she sat in to paint, to disappear into her art because she had nothing else. Around him, her studio felt like a crime scene, evidence of suffering he'd been too blind to see. He looked at her paintings, really looked at them for the first time in years. They were beautiful, technically perfect, and absolutely, devastatingly sad. Dark colors, isolated figures, empty rooms, ocean scenes where the water looked like it could swallow you whole. Every single painting was a woman screaming silently into the void, and he'd never fucking noticed. Nico stayed in that chair until dawn, going through her things, finding the architecture of her loneliness piece by piece. A journal with entries that got shorter and emptier as the months passed. Sketches of babies that were never finished. A small white box hidden in the back of her closet. Inside the box, fragments of their relationship. Movie tickets from their first date. Photographs from before the empire consumed everything. Handwritten notes he'd left her in the early days when he still remembered she existed. And at the bottom, a letter. not addressed to him, just folded carefully, like she'd written it for herself. Nico's hands shook as he opened it. I don't know when I became invisible to you. Maybe it happened slowly, so slowly neither of us noticed until I was already gone. Or maybe it was always this way and I was too in love to see it. I lost our baby alone. Did you know that? Of course you didn't. You were in Colombia, saving the empire, building the kingdom, and I was in a hospital room hemorrhaging and knowing, absolutely knowing, that if I called you, if I interrupted your meetings with news of our dying child, you would be angry, not sad, angry. That's when I understood. I'm not your wife. I'm your decoration, beautiful and expensive and utterly disposable. I don't hate you for it. That's the worst part. I still love you. I probably always will. But I can't keep drowning just to make you comfortable. The letter ended there. No signature, no date. Just Serena's neat handwriting documenting the exact moment she'd decided to leave him. Nico read it 3 times, then folded it carefully and put it back in the box. Outside, dawn was breaking over Manhattan. The rain had stopped. The city was waking up to another day of violence and commerce and the endless grind of survival. And somewhere in that city, his wife, the woman he'd systematically destroyed through sheer neglect, was gone. Nico pulled out his phone, called Marco. Boss, I need everyone. Every resource we have. Airports, train stations, bus terminals. Check every camera, every feed, every fucking traffic light between here and the city limits. What are we looking for? My wife, Nico said. Find her. He hung up. Looked around Serena's studio one more time, at the sad paintings and hidden prescriptions and medical records that documented his failure as a husband. The most powerful mafia boss on the East Coast. A man who could make people disappear with a phone call, who controlled politicians and judges and entire criminal networks, and he couldn't even keep his wife from walking out the door. Nico stood, pocketed the letter, left the studio exactly as he'd found it. Outside, Manhattan glittered in the early morning sun. Somewhere in those millions of people, Serena was starting a new life. One where she wasn't invisible. And for the first time in his entire criminal career, Nico DeLuca had absolutely no idea how to fight an enemy who didn't want his power, his money, or his empire. She just wanted him to notice she'd been drowning right beside him all along. The war for Serena Vale had begun, and Nico was already losing. The first week, Nico told himself she'd come back. Women got upset. They needed space, time to cool off. She'd realize how good she had it. The penthouse, the cars, the security, the lifestyle most people only dreamed about. She'd call, apologize, come home. The second week, he stopped sleeping. Marco's team had turned Manhattan inside out. Every camera feed, every transit hub, every hotel registration within a 100-mile radius. They'd bribed TSA agents, interrogated cab drivers, threatened doormen at every building Serena had ever visited. Nothing. She'd evaporated like she'd never existed. Nico sat in his home office at 4 a.m, walls covered in printouts and maps and photographs. Red string connecting locations like a conspiracy theorist's wet dream. Her sister's apartment in Brooklyn, the gallery where she used to volunteer, coffee shops she frequented, her favorite bookstore in the village. All dead ends. Her sister Maya had stonewalled them completely. Slammed the door in Marco's face when he'd shown up asking questions. Threatened to call the cops when they came back. She knew something. Nico could feel it, but he couldn't exactly waterboard his wife's sister for information. Not yet, anyway. His phone buzzed. Tony. We got a problem, his captain said without preamble. I don't give a fuck about problems right now. This one you do. The Bratva's pushing hard into Red Hook. 3 of our guys got jumped outside the warehouse last night. One's in the hospital. The Russians are saying it's open territory now. Nico closed his eyes, rubbed his face. Tell Frankie to handle it. Boss, this needs you. They're not going to back down unless... I said Frankie handles it. Nico's voice came out flat, dead. That's what I pay him for. Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, Nico, you okay? Fine. You don't sound fine. You sound like... Like what? Nico snapped. Like my wife walked out and I can't find her? Like I'm sitting here going through her shit realizing I don't know a goddamn thing about the woman I married? More silence. Tony cleared his throat. Listen, boss, You want my advice? I don't. You're better off without her. She was always too soft for this life anyway. You need someone who understands what it takes to... Nico hung up, threw his phone across the room. It shattered against the wall, pieces scattering across imported hardwood. The silence rushed back in, suffocating. Around him, Serena's absence had infected every corner of the penthouse. Her paintings were gone from the walls, leaving pale rectangles where they'd hung for years. Her music didn't drift through the apartment anymore. No coffee brewing in the morning, no quiet footsteps in the studio, no soft breathing beside him in bed. Just emptiness. Nico looked at the wall covered in his investigation. All this effort, all this power, all these resources. And he still couldn't find one woman who'd decided she was done being invisible. His new phone rang. Marco. Tell me something good, Nico said. Can't, but I got something. Marco's voice was tight. Found a credit card charge, small bookstore in Portland, 3 days ago. Nico sat up straight. Portland, Maine? Oregon. You're sure it's her? Cards registered to her maiden name, Vale. She must have kept it active all these years as a backup. Nico was already moving, grabbing his coat, his keys. Send me the address at... Boss, it's one transaction. Could be fraud, could be... Send me the fucking address! 20 minutes later, Nico was on his private plane heading west. He brought Marco and 2 other soldiers, told Tony to keep the empire running, didn't explain where he was going or why. Just disappeared into the night the same way Serena had. The flight took 6 hours. Nico didn't sleep, didn't eat, just sat in the leather seat staring out at clouds and darkness, trying to figure out what the hell he was going to say when he found her. I'm sorry seemed pathetically inadequate. Come home was a command, and he'd learned commands didn't work on ghosts. I love you was true, but meaningless when he'd spent years proving the opposite. By the time they landed in Portland, dawn was breaking over the Pacific. Gray sky, rain coming down steady, the kind of wet cold that soaked through everything. Marco had already arranged a rental SUV. They drove through the city following GPS coordinates to a small coastal town 30 miles north. Population maybe 5,000. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone and strangers stuck out like blood on snow. The bookstore sat on a corner facing the ocean. Small, independent, hand-painted sign reading shore stories hanging above the door. Through the windows, Nico could see warm light, shelves packed with books, a small cafe counter in the back, and behind that counter, making coffee in an oversized sweater and jeans, was Serena. Nico's chest constricted. She looked different. Her hair was longer, no makeup, no designer clothes, no jewelry except a simple silver bracelet he'd never seen before. She looked healthy, free, like she'd been holding her breath for years and finally remembered how to exhale. Boss, Marco said quietly, you want us to wait here or, wait here. Nico climbed out of the SUV. All of you. Don't follow me in. The bookstore door chimed when he pushed it open. Serena looked up reflexively, customer service smile already forming. Then she saw him. The smile died instantly. Every drop of color drained from her face. The coffee pot in her hand started shaking. For a long moment, they just stared at each other across the small bookstore. Romance novels and mysteries and children's books surrounding them like witnesses. Nico. His name came out barely a whisper. Serena. She set the coffee pot down carefully. Her hands were trembling. How did you find me? Credit card. The one in your maiden name. I was careful. Not careful enough. She closed her eyes, took a breath. When she opened them again, something had shifted. The shock was gone. In its place, exhausted resignation. You need to leave, she said quietly. We need to talk. No, we don't. Serena moved from behind the counter, putting distance between them. You need to get back on whatever plane brought you here and go home. This is home now? Nico gestured around the bookstore. This? Yes. You went from a penthouse in Manhattan to a fucking bookstore in Oregon. I went from drowning to breathing. Her voice stayed calm, flat. There's a difference. Nico took a step closer. She took a step back. The dance was automatic, familiar. How many years had they moved around each other like this? Always maintaining distance, always keeping safe space between them. I read your letter, he said. Serena's expression flickered, just for a second. Then the mask came back. Which one? The one in the white box. About the baby. She flinched like he'd hit her. Actually flinched. Her hand went to her stomach reflexively before she caught herself and dropped it. Don't, she said. Don't you dare come here, and I didn't know. The words rushed out. Serena, I swear to Christ, I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. Her voice cracked. You were in Colombia, running your empire. And I was in a hospital room bleeding out our child, and I couldn't even call you because I knew you'd be angry that I interrupted. I wouldn't have been angry. Yes, you would have. She laughed. No humor in it, just bitter truth. You would have been pissed that I bothered you with personal shit during business hours. You would have sent money, told me to handle it, maybe called when you had a free minute between cartel meetings. The words hit like bullets because they were true. Every single syllable was true. I would have come home, Nico said, but even he could hear how hollow it sounded. No, you wouldn't have. Serena wrapped her arms around herself, defensive, small. And even if you did, you would have resented me for it, made me feel like my pain was inconvenient, like I was inconvenient. That's not... When was the last time you asked me how I was? The question came out sharp, angry. Not, how was your day in passing? Not small talk over breakfast. Actually looked at me and asked if I was okay. Nico opened his mouth, closed it, couldn't answer. Because he couldn't remember. Serena saw his failure written across his face, nodded slowly. That's what I thought. I'm here now, Nico said, desperate. I'm here asking, how are you? You don't get to do that. Her voice broke. You don't get to show up after 6 months and pretend you care. You don't get to invade my life because you finally noticed I left. I noticed the second you walked out. No, you noticed your wife was gone. You noticed your possession had escaped. Serena's eyes were wet now, but she didn't let the tears fall. You don't even know me, Nico. You know the woman you married, the girl who believed you when you said you'd build an empire for her instead of her, but that person died a long time ago. Serena, I mourned our baby alone. The words came out raw, bleeding. I lay in that hospital bed and felt our child die inside me, and I couldn't even cry because I was too terrified of bothering you. Do you understand how fucked up that is? How completely destroyed I had to be to think my grief would inconvenience my husband. Nico felt something crack open in his chest. I would have been there, but you weren't. Simple. Final. You weren't there when I needed you. You weren't there when I was drowning in depression. You weren't there at our anniversary dinner. You weren't there for any of it because you stopped seeing me years ago. The bookstore door chimed. An older woman walked in, took one look at them, and quietly walked back out. Serena wiped her eyes. You need to leave. I can't. Yes, you can. You walk out that door, get back on your plane, and go back to your empires. I don't give a fuck about the empire. She laughed, bitter, broken. Now you don't. Now that I'm gone. But when I was sitting in our apartment every night waiting for you to come home, when I was painting sad fucking pictures because I had nothing else, when I was losing our baby, where was the empire then? I'm selling it, Nico said. The words hung in the air between them. Serena stared at him. What? The whole thing. All of it. I'm getting out. You're lying. I'm not. Nico took another step closer. This time she didn't retreat. I've been making calls, setting up meetings. There's a family in Boston that'll take most of the territory. The legitimate businesses I'm keeping, but the rest, the violence, the crime, all of it, I'm done. You can't just walk away from the Mafia. Watch me. They'll kill you. Maybe, Nico shrugged. But I'd rather die trying to be someone worth loving than live another 30 years as the man who lost you. Serena's breath hitched. Don't do this. Do what? Don't say things you don't mean. Don't make promises you can't keep just because you're scared of being alone. I'm not scared of being alone. Nico's voice dropped, raw, honest. I'm terrified of living the rest of my life knowing I had everything that mattered, and I threw it away because I was too fucking stupid to notice. She shook her head, tears finally spilling over. It's too late. Says who? Says me. Says the woman who spent 5 years being invisible, who lost a baby alone, who walked out on her anniversary because her husband literally said he'd just marry someone else. Serena's voice rose. You broke me, Nico. Systematically. Completely. And now you show up here expecting what? Forgiveness? A second chance? For me to just forget everything and come home like a good little mafia wife? No. Nico stopped moving, stood perfectly still. I expect nothing. I deserve nothing, but I'm asking anyway. Asking what? For time. Not forgiveness. Not even a second chance. Just time to prove I can be different. You can't change who you are. I can try. And when you fail, when the Empire pulls you back, when another deal or war or territory dispute becomes more important than me again, Serena's voice cracked. What then? Then you leave. For good. No searching, no phone calls. I let you go. She studied his face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the angle. But Nico had no angle left, no strategy, no leverage, just a broken man standing in a bookstore 3,000 miles from home, begging the woman he'd destroyed to give him a chance he didn't deserve. I have a life here, Serena said finally. A job, an apartment, friends who don't know my last name or that I used to be married to a mafia boss. Keep it, all of it. Nico gestured to the bookstore. I'll rent a place nearby, won't bother you, won't show up unless you ask. Just let me stay close enough to prove I mean what I'm saying. And if I say no? The question hung heavy between them. Nico swallowed hard. Then I leave, tonight, and you never see me again. Serena wrapped her arms tighter around herself, looked out the window at the ocean, gray waves crashing against rocky shore, rain still coming down steady. Finally she spoke. There's a cottage for rent 2 blocks from here, month to month. The landlord's an old man named Henry who doesn't ask questions. Nico's chest loosened fractionally. Okay. You stay there, not with me. You don't show up at my apartment. You don't come into the bookstore unless I invite you. And if I decide this was a mistake, you leave immediately. No arguments. Done. I'm serious, Nico. One wrong move and I understand. He did, completely. Thank you. Serena finally looked at him again. Her eyes were red, exhausted. Don't thank me yet. You haven't earned it. I know. She pulled out her phone, texted him an address. Henry's place. Tell him Serena sent you. He'll give you the keys. Nico's phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't check it, just kept looking at his wife, ex-wife. He didn't even know anymore, memorizing the way she looked in this new life. Softer, sadder, free. I should get back to work, Serena said quietly. Right, yeah. Nico backed toward the door, stopped. For what it's worth, I really am sorry, for all of it. She didn't respond, just turned back to the coffee pot and started making drinks for customers who hadn't arrived yet. Nico left before his presence could do more damage. Outside, Marco and the soldiers were waiting in the SUV. They straightened when he approached. Boss? Marco asked. Everything okay? Fine. You 3 are flying back to New York tonight. What about you? I'm staying. For how long? Nico looked back at the bookstore. Through the window, he could see Serena moving behind the counter, living her life, breathing. As long as it takes, he said. The soldiers exchanged glances but didn't argue. They knew better. 3 hours later, Nico stood alone in a small coastal cottage that smelled like salt water and old wood. 1 bedroom, tiny kitchen, living room with furniture that had seen better days. It was smaller than his walk-in closet in Manhattan. It was perfect. He unpacked the single bag he'd brought, called Tony. How's it going? His captain asked. I need you to start the transition, Nico said. Contact the Morellis in Boston. Set up a meeting. I want this done clean. Boss, you're serious about this? Dead serious. The families aren't going to like it. There's protocols, territory agreements. You can't just... I can and I am. Make it happen. Nico hung up before Tony could argue further. Then he sat on the worn couch in his rented cottage and stared out at the ocean. Storm clouds gathering, waves getting rougher. Somewhere in this tiny town, Serena was living a life that didn't include him. And for the first time in his criminal career, Nico DeLuca had no plan, no strategy, no angle, just hope that maybe, he could become someone worth loving again. The days that followed were brutal. Nico had spent 20 years running an empire. Constant motion, endless decisions, phone calls and meetings, and violence that demanded his attention every waking hour. Now he had nothing. He woke up at dawn because old habits died hard, made coffee in the tiny kitchen, watched the ocean through salt-stained windows. Then the day stretched out empty and meaningless in front of him. He tried taking walks. The town was small enough to cross in 20 minutes. Rain came down steady. Locals gave him suspicious looks, stranger in expensive clothes standing on the beach staring at nothing. He tried reading, went to the bookstore during Serena's day off, bought a stack of novels he'd never have time for in his old life. Couldn't focus long enough to finish a chapter. He tried calling Tony for updates on the Empire. "Don't," his captain said flatly. "You want it out? Stay out. Let us handle it." So Nico sat in his cottage and drowned in silence. No deals to negotiate. No enemies to crush, no empire to run, just a man alone with the wreckage of his marriage and no idea how to rebuild it. The first time he saw Serena again was 4 days later. Nico was walking along the beach in the rain, his new pointless routine, when he spotted her sitting on a bench overlooking the water. Same oversized sweater, hair whipping in the wind, staring out at the gray horizon like it held answers. He almost kept walking, remembered her rules. "Don't show up unless I invite you." But then she turned, saw him, and didn't immediately leave. Nico took that as permission. He sat on the opposite end of the bench, left space between them, ocean crashing below, rain soaking through his coat. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Serena said, "You're still here. I told you I would be. Most people say a lot of things. I'm not most people." She almost smiled. Almost. "No, you're definitely not." More silence. The kind that used to be comfortable once upon a time, before the Empire, before the violence, before invisible became her default state. "How's the bookstore?" Nico asked. "Good. Busy. Tourist season starting up." "You like it? The work?" "I love it." She pulled her sweater tighter. "People come in looking for stories, recommendations, escape, and I get to help them find it. It's simple. Honest. Unlike being a Mafia wife. Unlike being invisible." She glanced at him. "No offense?" "None taken." Nico deserved worse. "For what it's worth, you were never invisible to me." "Yes, I was. You just didn't realize it." The truth sat between them like a third person on the bench. "Tell me about the baby," Nico said quietly. Serena went rigid. "No. Please, I need to—" "No." Her voice cracked. "I can't. Not yet." "Okay." Nico backed off immediately. "Okay. I'm sorry." They sat in silence again. The rain picked up, thunder rolling in from the ocean. "I should go," Serena said, standing. Nico stood too. "Can I walk you back?" She hesitated, then nodded. They walked through the rain without speaking. When they reached the bookstore, Serena stopped. "Thank you," she said, "for not pushing." "I'm done pushing." She studied his face, looking for something. Then, quietly, "There's a farmer's market tomorrow morning, on the square. I usually go around 9. It took Nico a second to understand. An invitation, casual, small, but an invitation. "I'll be there," he said. Serena nodded, turned to go, then paused. "Nico?" "Yeah?" "Don't wear a suit. You look like a Fed." She disappeared into the bookstore before he could respond. Nico stood in the rain, something close to hope flickering in his chest for the first time in months. The farmer's market was exactly what it sounded like. Local vendors selling produce and crafts and homemade soap under white tents while folk music played from scratchy speakers. Nico showed up in jeans and a flannel shirt he'd bought at a local shop. Felt like he was wearing a costume. Probably looked like it too. Serena was already there, browsing vegetable stands. She saw him and waved. Actually, waved. "You look ridiculous," she said when he approached. "I look normal." "You look like a mobster trying to blend in at a farmer's market." "I am a mobster trying to blend in at a farmer's market." She laughed. Actually laughed. The sound hit Nico like a drug he'd forgotten he was addicted to. They walked through the market together. Serena bought flowers and fresh bread and vegetables she probably didn't need. Nico carried her bags because he needed something to do with his hands. "So what do you do all day?" she asked. "In your cottage?" "Nothing. Mostly stare at the ocean and wonder how I fucked up this badly." "That sounds depressing." "It is." "Good." No malice in her voice. Just honesty. "You should feel depressed. You earned it." "I did." They stopped at a coffee stand. Serena ordered something complicated with oat milk. Nico got it black. "You're not going back, are you?" she asked. "To New York." "Not unless you tell me to." "What about your empire?" "Being dismantled as we speak. Tony's handling the transition. Should be done in a few months." Serena sipped her coffee. "They're going to kill you for that." "Probably. And you're okay with it?" "If it means I get a chance to fix what I broke?" "Yeah, I'm okay with it." She didn't respond, just kept walking. They ended up on the same bench from yesterday. Ocean crashing, wind howling, coffee going cold in their hands. "I was pregnant for 3 months before I lost the baby," Serena said suddenly. 3 months. And I didn't tell you because I was scared. Nico went very still, didn't interrupt. "I kept thinking I'd wait until you had a free moment, until you weren't dealing with a crisis, until the timing was right." Her voice stayed flat, factual, like she was reading from a medical report. "But there's never a right time when you're married to the empire." I started bleeding at work. Gallery fundraiser. I was helping set up when it happened. Thought it was normal at first. Then I realized. She wrapped her arms around herself. Made it to the hospital alone. Sat in the waiting room filling out forms while I miscarried. They asked for emergency contacts. I left it blank. Nico felt something die inside his chest. "The doctor said it happens sometimes. Nothing I did wrong, just bad luck." Serena's voice cracked finally. "But I couldn't stop thinking that if I'd been less stressed, if I'd been happier, if my husband had noticed I existed, maybe our baby would have lived. That's not—" "I know." She cut him off. "Logically, I know, but grief isn't logical, and I was so fucking alone." The rain started again. Neither of them moved. "I wanted to call you," Serena whispered, "even after everything, even knowing you'd be angry. I wanted to hear your voice and have you tell me it would be okay. But I couldn't. Because somewhere along the way you stopped being my husband and started being my warden." The words landed like bullets. Nico sat there taking the damage, deserving every bit of it. "I don't know if I can forgive you," Serena said finally. "For the baby, for the years of loneliness, for making me feel like I was crazy for wanting my own husband to look at me. I'm not asking for forgiveness." "Then what are you asking for?" "A chance to be different." Nico turned to face her. "Not the man I was. Someone new. Someone who deserves you. And if you can't be, then you were right to leave. And I was right to let you go." Serena looked at him for a long time, rain soaking through her hair, eyes red and exhausted and still so goddamn beautiful. It hurt. "I'm going to the bookstore," she said, standing. "Don't follow me." She left. Nico sat alone on the bench until dark. The weeks that followed fell into a strange rhythm. Nico existed in the margins of Serena's life, always close, never invasive. He'd show up at the farmer's market on Saturday mornings. They'd walk, drink coffee, talk about nothing important. Sometimes Serena would text him, "Beach, 20 minutes," and he'd drop everything to meet her. Other times, days would pass with silence. Nico would see her through the bookstore window, but wouldn't go inside, just kept walking, giving her space. Slowly, so slowly he barely noticed, she started letting him in. A dinner invitation. "Nothing fancy, just pasta, if you want." He wanted. A movie at the tiny local theater. They sat in the back, didn't touch, but they sat together. A walk that lasted 3 hours. Rain pouring, both of them soaked, talking about the years they'd wasted. "I used to paint you," Serena admitted one night, "in the early days, before everything got complicated." "Yeah?" "You were my favorite subject, the way you moved, the intensity. I thought you were beautiful." "Thought?" "Think." She corrected herself. Present tense. Unfortunately. Nico almost reached for her hand, stopped himself. "I'm sorry I stopped looking. I'm sorry I stopped existing. You never stopped existing. To you, I did. The honesty between them was brutal. No protection, no walls, just two broken people trying to figure out if they could be unbroken together. Then one night, everything changed. Nico was at his cottage when his phone rang. Unknown number. Yeah? Is this Nico DeLuca? Unfamiliar voice. Male, professional. Who's asking? My name's Detective Graham, Portland PD. I'm calling about an incident at Shore Stories bookstore involving a woman named Serena Vale. Nico's blood went cold. What happened? There was an altercation. Ms. Vale is fine, but Nico was already moving, out the door, sprinting through rain toward the bookstore. His heart hammered, mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Robbery, assault, someone from his old life tracking her down. He reached the bookstore in under 3 minutes. Police cruisers outside. Lights flashing. Small crowd of locals watching. Nico pushed through. Found Serena sitting on a chair inside. Blanket around her shoulders. Officer taking notes. She looked up when he burst in. Nico, what happened? He scanned her for injuries. Are you hurt? I'm fine. Just shaken. The detective stepped forward. Mid-40s. Tired eyes. Mr. DeLuca? What the fuck happened? Drunk customer got aggressive. Started harassing Ms. Vale. She asked him to leave. He refused. Got physical. Rage flooded Nico's system. Pure. Violent. Where is he? In custody. Ms. Vale called 911 immediately. Officers arrived before. I want his name. Sir, I can't. His fucking name. Nico. Serena stood. Touched his arm. Stop. It's handled. He looked at her. Really looked. No visible bruises, but her hands were shaking, eyes too wide. He touched you, Nico said flatly. He grabbed my wrist. That's all. I'm okay. But she wasn't okay. Nico could see it in the way she held herself. The tremor in her voice. Someone had put hands on his wife, and terror was rising in her eyes, and every violent instinct he'd spent weeks suppressing came roaring back. I need to go, Nico said to the detective. Now. Mr. DeLuca, now. The detective seemed to recognize something dangerous in Nico's voice. Nodded. We'll be in touch if we need anything else. Nico guided Serena toward the door. She didn't resist. Outside, the rain had turned torrential. They walked in silence toward her apartment. When they reached her building, Serena stopped. You can't kill him. Nico's jaw clenched. I'm not going to... Yes, you are. I can see it in your face, that look, the one you used to get before someone disappeared. He put his hands on you. And he's in jail, where he belongs. The system is handling it. The system is shit. Maybe, but it's not your problem. Serena's voice hardened. You promised me different, Nico. You promised me you were getting out. That means no more violence, no more making people disappear because they pissed you off. This isn't about being pissed off. This is about what? Protecting me? I don't need protection. I need you to be different than you were. The words hit like a slap. Nico stood in the rain, every instinct screaming at him to hunt down the drunk bastard and make him regret ever looking at Serena wrong. But she was right. This was the test. Right here, right now. Old Nico would have had the guy bleeding in an alley by sunrise. New Nico had to walk away. Okay, he said finally. Okay, you're right. Serena searched his face, looking for the lie. You mean it? I mean it. She nodded slowly. Then, surprising them both, she took his hand. Come upstairs. Serena, just for coffee. I don't want to be alone right now. They climbed to her apartment in silence. Small studio, books everywhere, plants in the windows. Nothing like the penthouse in Manhattan. It looked like home. Serena made coffee with shaking hands. Nico watched her carefully, waiting for the shock to hit. It came halfway through pouring the second cup. Her hands started trembling worse. Coffee spilled. The mug shattered on the floor. Shit! Serena stared at the mess. Shit, I'm sorry, Nico moved, not thinking, just reacting. He pulled her away from the broken ceramic, wrapped his arms around her, held on tight. Serena went rigid at first. Then something broke. She started sobbing. Deep, wrenching sounds that came from somewhere primal. Not about the drunk customer, about everything. The baby, the loneliness, the years of drowning, the fear, the grief. All of it pouring out while Nico held her in a tiny Oregon apartment 3,000 miles from where their marriage first died. "I'm so tired," she whispered against his chest. "I'm so fucking tired of being broken." "I know." Nico's voice cracked. "I know. Me too." They sank to the floor together, Serena crying, Nico holding her, rain hammering the windows. And for the first time in months, maybe years, Nico felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not healing, just the first fragile thread connecting them again. When Serena finally stopped crying, she pulled back, looked at him with swollen eyes. "I don't know if we can fix this," she said. "I know. I don't know if I can trust you again. I know that too. But I want to try." Her voice barely a whisper. "I hate that I want to try, but I do." Nico cupped her face gently, thumbs wiping away tears. "Then we try." "And when it falls apart?" "If it falls apart," Nico corrected, "we face it together this time." Serena closed her eyes, leaned into his touch. And in that moment, Nico DeLuca, former Mafia boss, violent criminal, empire builder, made a choice. He wasn't going back to New York. He wasn't going back to the violence. He was staying right here, in this tiny coastal town, with this broken woman who somehow still loved him despite every reason not to. And if it killed him, he was going to become someone worth that love. The point of no return had arrived, and for once in his life, Nico was choosing the right direction. Nico woke up on Serena's couch to gray dawn light filtering through rain-streaked windows. His neck ached from the awkward angle. His shirt was still damp from last night's storm, but for the first time in months, he'd actually slept. Serena was in the kitchen making coffee. She'd changed into dry clothes, soft gray sweats and an oversized t-shirt, hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked young, vulnerable, real. "Morning," she said without turning around. "Morning." Nico sat up slowly. "Sorry, I didn't mean to crash here all night." "You didn't crash. I asked you to stay." She poured 2 mugs, brought one over. "How do you take it now?" "Now? You used to drink it with cream, but people change." The observation hit deeper than it should have. She'd noticed, actually paid attention to the small shifts in who he'd become. "Black's fine," Nico said, taking the mug. Their fingers brushed. Neither pulled away. Serena sat in the chair across from him, tucked her legs underneath her, sipped her coffee, and stared at nothing. "I have to open the bookstore in an hour," she said finally. "Want me to come with you?" "No, I need to do it myself." She glanced at him. "But maybe you could walk me there." "Yeah, of course." They finished their coffee in comfortable silence, the kind they used to share before words became weapons and distance became survival. 40 minutes later, they walked through empty streets toward shore stories. Rain had stopped, but everything was soaked. Puddles reflecting gray sky, ocean roaring in the distance. "Thank you," Serena said as they reached the bookstore. "For last night, for not—" She stopped, started over. "For being different." "I meant what I said. I'm not going back." "To New York?" "To who I was." Nico shoved his hands in his pockets. "That man lost you. I'm not making the same mistakes twice." Serena's expression softened. She stepped closer, reached up, kissed his cheek. "I'll see you later," she whispered. Then she disappeared into the bookstore before he could respond. Nico stood on the sidewalk feeling the ghost of her lips against his skin, hope blooming in his chest like something dangerous and fragile. He walked back to his cottage, made more coffee, tried to read, couldn't focus. His phone buzzed. "Tony." Against his better judgment, Nico answered. "Yeah? We got a problem." Tony's voice was tight. "Wrong." "What kind of problem?" "The Morellis pulled out. Deal's dead." Nico went still. "What do you mean, dead?" "I mean, they're not buying. Said the territory's too hot. Feds are sniffing around. They don't want the exposure." "So find another buyer." "There is no other buyer, Nico. The families are spooked. Word got out you're walking away, and now everyone thinks it's a trap. Nobody wants to touch it." Nico's jaw clenched. "Then we liquidate. Sell the assets piecemeal. Shut down operations. I don't give a fuck how it happens. Just make it happen." Silence on the other end. Too long. Tony, what aren't you telling me? The Russians. Tony's voice dropped. They heard you're out. They're moving in. Hard. Took 3 of our warehouses last night. Killed 2 of our guys. They're saying the entire East Coast is open territory now. Let them have it. Nico, I said let them have it. Give them the warehouses, the territory, all of it. We're done. It's not that simple. Tony sounded exhausted. They're not just taking territory. They're hunting our people. Everyone who worked for you. They're sending a message that the DeLuca Empire is dead and anyone associated with it dies too. Something cold slithered down Nico's spine. How many? 6 dead so far. Another 4 missing. Marco's in hiding. Frankie got jumped outside his apartment last night. He's in ICU. The words landed like bullets. 6 dead. Men who worked for him, trusted him, believed in the empire he built. Now they were corpses because he decided to walk away. Pull everyone out, Nico said. Get them protection. Safe houses, whatever it takes. With what money? The accounts are frozen. Fed seized half our assets last week. Some prosecutor got a hard-on for RICO charges. Without you here running things, the whole operation's collapsing. Then let it collapse. Easy for you to say. You're 3,000 miles away playing house with your wife. Tony's voice turned bitter. The rest of us are bleeding out in the streets. The accusation hung in the air. Nico closed his eyes. What do you want from me? Come home. Fix this. Be the man we signed up to follow instead of whatever the fuck you're doing in Oregon. I can't. Can't or won't. Both. Nico's voice hardened. I'm out, Tony, completely. Find a way to shut it down clean or don't, but I'm not coming back. Then we're all dead men. Tony laughed, no humor in it. Hope she's worth it, boss. The line went dead. Nico sat in his cottage staring at his phone. Outside, rain started again. The ocean growled like something hungry. 6 men dead. Because of him. Because he'd chosen love over loyalty. Chosen redemption over responsibility. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Yeah? Mr. DeLuca. Unfamiliar voice. Female. Professional. My name is Agent Sarah Chen, FBI. I need to speak with you about your organization's activities in New York. Nico's blood went cold. I don't know what you're talking about. We can do this easy or hard, Mr. DeLuca, but we are going to talk. You can come to me voluntarily, or I can come to you. Your choice. I'm retired. From organized crime? Agent Chen laughed. That's not how it works. You don't get to walk away clean. You answer for what you built. I haven't been in New York for over a month. I'm aware. You've been in a small coastal town in Oregon, renting a cottage at 47 Shore Road, spending time with Serena Vale, your estranged wife. She paused. How am I doing so far? Terror spiked through Nico's system. They'd been watching him, tracking him, building a case while he'd been focused on rebuilding his marriage. What do you want? He asked quietly. Cooperation, testimony. You help us dismantle what's left of your organization, we'll talk about reduced charges. Maybe even immunity. And if I refuse? Then we arrest you, extradite you back to New York, charge you with racketeering, murder conspiracy, money laundering, drug trafficking. You'll die in prison, Mr. DeLuca. Is that really how you want this to end? Nico's mind raced. If they arrested him now, Serena would find out everything. The full scope of his crimes, the bodies, the violence, the empire built on blood money and broken bones. She'd see exactly who he'd been. And she'd never forgive him. I need time, Nico said. You have 24 hours. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m. at the Portland field office. Or I come to you with handcuffs. Agent Chen's voice softened slightly. For what it's worth, Mr. DeLuca, I've been tracking you for 3 years. I know what you've done. But I also know you're trying to change. Help us, and maybe you get a second chance. She hung up. Nico sat frozen. Phone still pressed to his ear. The walls of his tiny cottage suddenly felt like they were closing in. 24 hours. Either he betrayed everyone who'd ever worked for him, became a rat, a snitch, everything he'd spent his entire criminal career despising, or he went to prison and lost Serena forever. There was no third option. His phone buzzed again. Text from Serena. Dinner tonight? My place, 7 p.m. Nico stared at the message, the innocence of it, the hope embedded in those simple words. She was inviting him into her life. Opening the door he'd thought was locked forever, and he was about to destroy everything. He typed back, "I'll be there." Then he sat in the silence and tried to figure out how the fuck he was supposed to salvage any of this. The hours crawled past like something dying. Nico tried to think, to plan, to find some angle he was missing. But every scenario ended the same way: prison or betrayal. Losing Serena or losing everything else. At 6:30, he walked to Serena's apartment. Rain coming down steady, ocean invisible in the darkness. She answered the door in jeans and a cream sweater, barefoot, hair loose around her shoulders. The apartment smelled like garlic and wine. "Hey," she said, smiling. Actually smiling. "Come in." Nico stepped inside. The small space felt warm, lived in, books everywhere, music playing softly, candles burning on the kitchen counter. She'd cooked pasta. Nothing fancy, just simple food and quiet domesticity, everything he'd never given her when they were married. "This is nice," Nico said, his voice coming out rougher than intended. "Yeah?" Serena handed him a glass of wine. "I thought we could use a normal night. No drama, no past, just dinner." "Just dinner," Nico echoed. They ate at her small table, talked about nothing important. Books she'd been reading, customers at the bookstore, the weather. Surface-level conversation that felt like something precious because it was normal. Real. The life he was about to lose. After dinner, they moved to the couch. Serena curled up beside him, not touching, but close, closer than they'd been in years. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. "Anything. Do you regret it? The empire, the violence, all of it." Nico didn't answer right away. Couldn't lie. Not now. Not to her. "I regret what it cost me," he said finally. "I regret losing you. But the empire itself?" He shook his head. "It was who I was. I can't regret being something I chose to become. Even knowing where it led? Even then." Nico looked at her. "But I can regret not seeing you disappear. Not fighting for you when it mattered. Not being someone worth staying for." Serena was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I think that's the first completely honest thing you've said to me in 5 years." "Yeah?" "Yeah." She reached over, took his hand. "Thank you." They sat like that, hand in hand, rain against the windows, music playing softly, and Nico felt the weight of what he was about to lose crushing down on him. "I need to tell you something," he said. Serena tensed. "Okay." "The FBI contacted me today. They want me to testify. Against my organization. Against everyone who worked for me." She pulled her hand back slowly. "What did you tell them?" "That I needed time." "How much time?" 24 hours. I meet with them tomorrow or they arrest me." Serena stood, moved to the window, wrapped her arms around herself. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." "Yes, you do." She turned to face him. "You've already decided. I can see it on your face." Nico stood too. "If I testify, men die. Men who trusted me, who worked for me. I become everything I spent my entire life hating. And if you don't, I go to prison for the rest of my life, lose you, lose everything. So you're choosing them over me." Not a question, a statement. "No. I'm trying to figure out how not to lose everyone." Serena laughed, bitter, broken. "You still don't get it. There is no way out, Nico. You built an empire on violence and blood money. You don't get to walk away clean. Nobody does." "I know that." "Do you?" Her voice rose. "Because from where I'm standing, you're still trying to have it both ways. Be the honorable criminal who doesn't rat. Be the reformed husband who deserves a second chance. But you can't be both." "I'm trying." "You're trying to protect people who would kill you in a heartbeat if the money was right. Men who deal drugs and run protection rackets and murder anyone who gets in their way." She stepped closer. "Those are the people you're choosing over me, over us, over everything we could be." The words hit like gunshots. Because she was right. Every syllable was right. "They're dying because of me," Nico said quietly. 6 men are already dead because I walked away and left them vulnerable. How many more die if I testify? If I give the FBI everything they need to dismantle what's left? How many people died building your empire? Serena's eyes were wet now. How many families destroyed? How many lives ruined? You want to talk about collateral damage, Nico? You built your entire kingdom on it. That's exactly what it is. Her voice cracked. And I can't watch you choose them again. I can't sit here and pretend it's noble that you'd rather go to prison than save yourself. It's not noble. It's the same bullshit loyalty that made you miss our anniversary, that made you ignore me while I was drowning, that made you value the empire over everything real in your life. Nico felt something break apart in his chest. What do you want me to do? I want you to choose me. The words came out raw, desperate. For once in your life, I want you to choose me over the violence, over the loyalty, over the code. Just choose me. The silence between them was deafening. Nico stood there, looking at the woman he'd loved for 10 years and destroyed for 5, the woman who'd given him one last impossible chance. And he realized she was asking him to become someone completely different, not reformed, not redeemed, someone new. Okay, he said finally. Okay, what? I'll testify. The words felt like swallowing broken glass. I'll give them everything. Names, locations, operations, all of it. Serena searched his face. You mean it? I mean it. And when they come for revenge, when the families put a price on your head, then we deal with it. Together. She closed her eyes, tears finally spilling over. I don't know if I believe you. I know. I don't know if I can trust this. I know that too. Serena opened her eyes, looked at him with something that might have been hope or might have been resignation. Don't lie to me, she whispered. If you're going to do this, don't lie. Don't protect me from it. Don't hide pieces. I need to know everything. Everything? Every crime, every body, every terrible thing you did building that empire. Her voice hardened. If I'm going to stand beside you through this, I need to know exactly who I'm standing beside. Nico felt his throat close. You don't want to know. Yes, I do. Serena, tell me. She moved closer. Right now. Tell me the worst thing you ever did. The question hung in the air like something toxic. Nico's mind raced through a catalog of violence. Executions he'd ordered, bodies he'd buried, families he'd destroyed. A lifetime of brutal decisions made in service of power and control. But one memory rose above the others, the one that still woke him up at night. There was a prosecutor, he said quietly. Federal. He was building a case against us. Getting close. Too close. Serena went very still. I had him killed. Nico's voice stayed flat, factual. Made it look like a robbery. He had a wife, 2 kids. I knew that. Didn't matter. He was a threat, so I eliminated him. When? 3 years ago. 3 years. Serena's voice shook. We were married, living together. I was painting in my studio while you were ordering someone's father killed. Yes. Did you ever think about them? His family? No. The honesty tasted like poison. Not until it was done. By then it was too late. Serena wrapped her arms tighter around herself. Who else? Serena, you don't need... Who else? So Nico told her everything. The bodies, the bribes, the extortion, the drugs, the violence. 20 years of criminal enterprise laid out in brutal detail while his wife stood in her tiny Oregon apartment listening to exactly who he'd been. When he finished, the silence was absolute. Serena moved to the window, stared out at the rain. Her reflection in the glass looked haunted. I need you to leave, she said finally. Nico's stomach dropped. Serena, not forever, just tonight. I need to think. About what? About whether I can live with this. With you. With knowing what you've done and choosing you anyway. She turned to face him. I love you, Nico. I probably always will. But I don't know if love is enough when you're built on this much blood. Nico wanted to argue, to explain, to make her understand, but there was nothing to say. He'd told her the truth, shown her the monster beneath the man. Now she had to decide if she could live with it. Tomorrow morning, Nico said quietly, after I meet with the FBI. I'll come by the bookstore. You can tell me then. Serena nodded. didn't meet his eyes. Nico walked to the door, stopped. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. I know you are. Her voice was barely a whisper. I just don't know if sorry is enough. He left before she could see him break. Outside, the rain had turned violent, wind howling off the ocean, thunder cracking overhead. Nico walked through the storm back to his cottage, soaked through, shivering, feeling like he'd just severed his last connection to anything good in his life. Inside, he stripped off his wet clothes, stood in the shower until the water ran cold. Then he sat on his bed in the darkness and faced the truth. Tomorrow, he'd become a rat. Betray everyone who'd ever trusted him. Put targets on the backs of men who'd bled for his empire. And he still might lose Serena anyway. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. We know where you are. We know about the FBI. Run now or die tomorrow. Nico stared at the message. The Russians. They'd found him. Which meant Serena was in danger too. He grabbed his gun from the nightstand, checked the clip, moved to the window. Outside, headlights cut through the rain. Black SUV, pulling up slowly across the street. The passenger door opened. A man stepped out, big, professional, gun visible under his jacket. Then the driver's side opened, and Nico's world imploded, because the man stepping out of the SUV, the man who'd tracked him 3,000 miles across the country, wasn't Russian. It was Tony, his captain, his second in command, the man he'd trusted to dismantle the empire. Standing in the rain with a gun and murder written across his face, Nico's phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. You don't get to walk away, boss. Nobody does. The pieces slammed together. The dead men. The failed deal with the Morellis. The FBI timing their approach perfectly. Tony had orchestrated all of it, not to save the empire, to destroy the man who'd abandoned it. Nico watched through the window as Tony approached his cottage. Two more men emerging from the SUV behind him, armed, professional, coming to finish what Nico had started when he chose Serena over loyalty. And in that moment, Nico DeLuca realized he'd already lost. The empire was gone. His life was forfeit. And even if he survived the next 10 minutes, Serena would never look at him the same way after learning exactly what he'd built his kingdom on. He'd wanted redemption. Instead, he'd found the exact price of trying to leave the violence behind. His phone buzzed one more time. Text from Serena. I'm sorry. I can't do this. Don't come to the bookstore tomorrow. Don't call. Don't contact me. Just go. The words blurred as Tony kicked in the cottage door downstairs. Nico raised his gun toward the sound of footsteps on the stairs and understood with perfect clarity that he'd destroyed everything worth saving, and there was no way back. Nico moved before thinking, threw himself sideways as the first gunshot punched through the bedroom door. Wood splintering, plaster exploding from the wall where his head had been seconds earlier. He hit the floor hard, rolled, came up firing, 3 shots through the door, blind, desperate. A grunt from the hallway, someone hitting the floor. Boss, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Tony's voice. Calm. Professional. Like they were negotiating territory instead of Nico's execution. Nico scrambled toward the window, rain hammering the glass, ocean roaring below. Second floor dropped to concrete and rocks. Another gunshot. The window shattered, glass everywhere, wind screaming through the opening, rain soaking everything. Nico fired twice more through the doorway, heard footsteps retreating down the stairs. They were regrouping, flanking, coming at him from multiple angles. He had maybe 30 seconds. Nico grabbed his phone, shoved it in his pocket, checked his gun. 4 rounds left. 4 bullets against 3 trained killers who knew exactly how he operated because he'd trained them himself. The math was simple. He was dead. Unless he did something completely insane. Nico climbed through the broken window onto the narrow ledge outside, rain immediately blinding him, wind trying to rip him off the building. Below, rocks and concrete waited patiently. He edged along the ledge toward the fire escape. 10 feet. Might as well be 10 miles. Behind him, footsteps pounded up the stairs again. Nico moved faster, fingers digging into the wet siding, feet slipping on the narrow ledge. The bedroom door crashed open. He's on the fucking ledge, someone shouted. Gunfire erupted, bullets chewing up the siding around him. One grazed his shoulder, Hot pain, blood mixing with rain. Nico lunged for the fire escape, caught the rusted metal railing, swung himself over just as another bullet sparked off the metal inches from his hand. He half fell, half climbed down the fire escape, boots ringing on metal, rain making everything slick. Hit the alley at a dead run. Behind him, voices, footsteps. More gunfire. Nico sprinted through the darkness, legs pumping, lungs burning, rain turning the alley into a rushing stream. He knew this town now, knew the streets, the shortcuts, the places locals went and tourists avoided. But Tony knew he knew, which meant Tony was already anticipating his moves. Nico cut left, through a narrow passage between buildings, emerged on the main street, empty, streetlights reflecting off wet pavement. He needed a phone, a weapon, help. He needed Serena. The thought hit him like a fist. If Tony found him, Tony would find her, would use her to draw him out, would hurt her to make a point. Nico pulled out his phone, Serena's last text still glowing on the screen. Don't contact me, just go. He called anyway, straight to voicemail, called again. Nothing. Terror clawed at his throat. He started running toward her apartment, 3 blocks, uphill, his shoulder screaming where the bullet had grazed him. Behind him, headlights cut through the rain. The black SUV. Hunting. Nico ducked into another alley, pressed himself against the wall, heart hammering so hard he could feel it in his skull. The SUV cruised past slowly, searchlight cutting through the darkness. Nico waited until it passed, then kept moving. 2 blocks from Serena's building, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered without thinking. What? You're making this complicated, boss. Tony's voice, casual, like they were discussing dinner plans. Just come out. Let's talk. Fuck you. That's disappointing. I thought we were professionals. Professionals don't execute their own people. You executed us first, the second you walked away. Tony's voice hardened. 6 men dead because you weren't there to protect them. The empire collapsing because you chose pussy over loyalty. You think we were just going to let that slide? The empire was always temporary. Not to us. Not to the men who bled building it. Static crackled. But you never cared about that. You built a kingdom, then abandoned it the second things got inconvenient. Just like you abandoned your wife for 10 years until she finally had the balls to leave. The words hit harder than bullets. Where is she? Nico demanded. Who, Serena? Safe. For now. Ice flooded Nico's veins. If you touch her, you'll what? Kill me? You had your chance for that, multiple times. But you went soft, started playing house, started believing you could be someone different. Tony laughed. There is no different, Nico. There's only what we are. And you're a killer, same as me. I'm nothing like you. Keep telling yourself that. Maybe eventually you'll believe it. The line went quiet for a second. Then, the bookstore. 30 minutes. Come alone, or she dies. The call ended. Nico stood in the rain, feeling his world collapse into a single burning point of focus. Tony had Serena. Every other consideration evaporated. The FBI, the Empire, his own survival. None of it mattered compared to getting her back. Nico checked his gun again. 4 bullets. 4 men, including Tony. The math was still impossible. He started moving anyway. The bookstore sat dark and empty when Nico arrived. Closed sign hanging in the window. Rain drumming on the awning. No lights, no movement. Nico circled the building once, looking for angles, exits, ambush points. Tony would have men positioned, covering approaches, ready to cut him down the second he stepped inside. This was a trap. Nico walked in anyway. The door chimed, cheerful, absurd. Inside, the bookstore was pitch black. Emergency exit signs casting red shadows across shelves packed with stories about heroes and villains and people who got happy endings. Tony! Nico called out, gun raised, scanning the darkness. I'm here! Lights snapped on, fluorescent, blinding. Nico's eyes adjusted slowly. Tony stood in the center of the store, gun hanging loose at his side. Casual, confident. Behind him, 2 more men, both armed, both trained. And sitting in a chair beside the cafe counter, hands zip-tied behind her back, was Serena. alive, unharmed, terrified. Her eyes met Nico's, wide, pleading, furious. "Let her go," Nico said quietly. "Sure." Tony smiled. "Soon as we're done talking." "We're done talking." "See, that's the problem. You keep thinking you get to decide when things are done." Tony stepped closer. "But you don't. Not anymore. You gave up that right when you walked away." "I had every right to walk away. From the Empire, maybe. From the men who built it with you, who bled for it, who trusted you." Tony shook his head. "That's betrayal, boss, and we don't forgive betrayal." Nico's finger tightened on the trigger. "Last chance. Let her go. Or what? You'll shoot me? Go ahead." Tony spread his arms. "Take the shot. See what happens." The two soldiers raised their weapons, aimed at Serena. The message was clear. Nico shoots Tony, they execute her immediately. Checkmate. "Smart," Nico said through gritted teeth. "I learned from the best." Tony lowered his arms. "Now put the gun down. Slowly." Nico hesitated, every instinct screaming at him to fight, to shoot his way out, to die trying rather than surrender. But Serena was crying silently in that chair, shaking, bleeding from a cut above her eye. They'd hurt her to get to him. Nico lowered his gun, set it on the floor, kicked it away. "Good," Tony said. "See, we can still be civilized. What do you want?" "What I've always wanted. Loyalty, respect, for you to understand what you threw away." Tony began pacing. "I worked for you for 12 years, 12 fucking years, killed for you, lied for you, built your empire brick by brick, and you repaid me by walking away the second your wife got sad." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" Tony's voice rose. "Explain it to me. Explain how abandoning everything we built for some woman who couldn't handle the life makes you anything but a coward." "She's not some woman. She's my wife." "She was your wife, past tense. The second you married into this life, she became part of it. She knew what you were, what you did. She doesn't get to play victim now." Serena's voice cut through the tension, small, broken. "I didn't know." Tony turned to her. "What?" "I didn't know. Not really." Tears streamed down her face. "I knew he ran criminal businesses. I knew there was violence, but I didn't know the bodies, the murders, the prosecutor with 2 kids. Her voice cracked. "I didn't know any of it until he told me tonight." The confession hung in the air like something toxic. Tony looked at Nico, then at Serena, then started laughing. "Unfucking believable," he said. "You kept her in the dark. Let her play Mafia princess while the real work got done in the shadows. That's beautiful, boss." "Really? Very romantic." "Shut up," Nico growled. "Or what? You'll defend her honor?" Tony moved closer to Serena. "Tell me something, sweetheart. Now that you know what he is, what he's really done, you still love him?" Serena didn't answer. "Come on," Tony pressed. "Don't be shy. You chose this. You chose him knowing he's got blood on his hands. That makes you complicit." "I chose to leave," Serena said quietly. "That's why I walked away. Because I couldn't live with what he'd become. And yet here you are, back in the shit. Because he couldn't let you go." Tony laughed again. "That's the tragedy, isn't it? He destroyed you by ignoring you, then destroyed you again by coming back. The man's a natural disaster in a suit." "Enough," Nico said. "You made your point. Let her go. Your problem is with me." "My problem is with both of you." Tony's expression hardened. "You're a rat, Nico. Agreed to testify against us. That makes you a dead man, and she's the reason you betrayed us. That makes her guilty too." Ice flooded Nico's veins. "She had nothing to do with that. She had everything to do with it. You chose her over loyalty. That's unforgivable." Tony raised his gun, pointed it at Serena's head. "So here's what happens. I execute her. You watch. Then I execute you. The Empire gets a message that betrayal has consequences. Clean. Simple." "Don't!" Nico's voice cracked. "Please, Tony, don't do this. You did this the second you walked away. I'll call the FBI, cancel the meeting, tell them I changed my mind." "Too late for that." "It's not. I swear, just let her go. You can have me. The Empire. Everything. Just let her walk away. She doesn't get to walk away. Neither do you. That's the whole fucking point. Tony's finger moved to the trigger. Say goodbye, boss. Serena closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. Nico's mind went blank. No strategy, no plan, just pure animal desperation. He lunged, not at Tony, at the nearest soldier, caught the man off guard, slammed into him, grabbed for his weapon. They went down together, grappling, wrestling for control. Gunfire erupted, the second soldier shooting, bullets chewing up the floor. Nico got his hands on the first soldier's gun, twisted it, pulled the trigger. The soldier's head snapped back, blood spraying. Nico rolled, came up shooting at the second soldier, hit him twice. Center mass. The man dropped. Tony was already moving, gun raised, aiming at Serena. Don't! Nico screamed. Time seemed to slow. Tony's finger tightening on the trigger, Serena opening her eyes, staring death in the face. Nico firing, missing. Tony's gun swinging toward Nico instead. You never learn, Tony said. The bookstore door exploded inward. Flash grenades, smoke, voices shouting, FBI, drop your weapons. Everything turned to chaos. Tony spun toward the door, started firing. Federal agents returning fire. The bookstore disintegrating into a war zone. Nico threw himself toward Serena, knocked the chair over, covered her body with his. Bullets everywhere, glass shattering, books exploding into paper confetti, Serena screaming beneath him. Nico felt something punch into his back, hot, wet. No pain yet, but he knew what it meant. He'd been shot. The gunfire stopped as suddenly as it started. Ringing silence. Smoke hanging in the air. Emergency lights flashing through broken windows. Nico tried to move. Couldn't. His body wasn't responding right. Everything felt distant. Wrong. Nico, Serena's voice, muffled, far away. Nico, stay with me. He felt hands on him, rolling him over. Serena's face swam into focus above him, covered in his blood, crying. You're okay, he tried to say. It came out as a whisper. You're hit. She was sobbing. You're hit. Someone help him. Nico looked past her, saw federal agents swarming the bookstore, saw Tony on the floor, unmoving, dead or dying. Saw Agent Chen kneeling beside him. Mr. DeLuca, she said, stay still. Ambulance is coming. Serena, he managed. She okay? She's fine. You covered her. She's fine. Relief flooded through him. Better than morphine. Tony? He asked. Dead. You got him. 3 shots. Center mass. Agent Chen's expression was unreadable. We had the bookstore under surveillance. Heard the whole thing. Your testimony just became irrelevant. Good, Nico whispered. His vision was blurring, going dark around the edges. Serena's face fading in and out. Stay awake, she begged. Please, Nico. Don't you dare leave me now. Not leaving, he said. Never leaving again. You better fucking not. He tried to smile. Not sure if his face was working right. Everything felt heavy, distant, sirens approaching, paramedics rushing in, voices overlapping, hands cutting away his shirt, pressure on his back where the bullet had entered. Serena holding his hand, refusing to let go even when they tried to move her. I love you, Nico said, or tried to say. His mouth wasn't cooperating. Don't, Serena said. Don't do the dying speech thing. You're not dying, you hear me? You don't get to die, not after everything. Not dying, he agreed. But his vision was going dark, the sounds fading, everything slipping away except Serena's hand in his and the feeling that maybe, he'd finally done something right. He'd chosen her. When it mattered most. He'd taken the bullet meant for her. And if he died right here on the bookstore floor, surrounded by shredded romance novels and federal agents, at least he'd die knowing she was safe. That had to count for something. The darkness took him gently, like drowning in warm water. Serena's voice calling him back from somewhere very far away. But Nico was tired. So tired. He let himself sink. When consciousness returned, it came in pieces. Fluorescent lights, antiseptic smell, steady beeping, hospital. Nico tried to move. Pain exploded through his back. White hot, blinding. Easy. A hand on his shoulder. Gentle. Don't move. You've got a tube in your chest. Nico's eyes focused slowly. Nurse, middle-aged, kind face. Where? His voice came out as gravel. Providence Portland Medical Center. You've been in surgery for 6 hours. Bullet collapsed your lung, nicked your liver. You're lucky to be alive. Serena. He forced the name out. Where is she? Your wife? In the waiting room. Has been since they brought you in. Won't leave. Won't eat. Just sits there. Relief. Pure and overwhelming. Can I see her? Soon. Doctor needs to examine you first. Make sure you're stable. The nurse left. Returned with a surgeon. Questions, examinations, explanations about internal injuries and recovery time and how close he'd come to bleeding out in that ambulance. Nico barely heard any of it. He just wanted to see Serena. Finally, after what felt like hours, the doctor left. And moments later, the door opened. Serena stood in the doorway, still wearing the same blood-stained clothes from the bookstore. Her hair was a mess, mascara smeared. She looked like she'd been through a war. She looked beautiful. Hey, Nico croaked. Hey. She moved to his bedside, slow, careful, like approaching something fragile. They stared at each other. No words, everything that needed saying written in the space between them. You saved my life, Serena said finally. You saved mine first. How? Gave me a reason to be better, to try. She reached out, touched his hand. Her fingers were freezing. I'm sorry, she whispered, for the text, for telling you not to contact me. I was scared, angry. But I didn't mean, I know. If you died thinking I didn't. I knew. Nico squeezed her hand weakly. You came back. That's all that matters. I never left. Not really. I was still in my apartment when they grabbed me, looking at my phone, debating calling you back. Her voice broke. Then Tony kicked in my door. He's dead. You know that? I know. I saw. Serena closed her eyes. I watched you kill him. Watched you kill those men. And I should feel something about that. Horror. Fear. But all I feel is relief. That makes you human, not a monster. Are you sure? Because I'm not. She opened her eyes. They told me everything. The FBI, about your empire, the full scope. The prosecutor, the bodies, all of it. They wanted to know if I was complicit. Nico's chest tightened. What did you tell them? The truth. That I was blind, willfully. That I chose not to see what you were because it was easier than facing it. Tears spilled over, but I see it now, all of it, and I don't know how to love you knowing what you've done. The words hit like bullets. So don't, Nico said quietly. Walk away. For real this time. I won't stop you. I can't. Yes, you can. You should. I can't. Serena's voice rose. Because you took a bullet for me. Because you chose me over everything. Because despite all the terrible things you've done, you became someone different when it mattered. And I don't know how to walk away from that. You're allowed to try. What if I don't want to? She leaned closer. What if I want to figure out if we can build something real from all this wreckage? That's a lot of wreckage. I know. Might be impossible. Probably is. Serena smiled, tiny, broken, real. But I'm willing to try, if you are. Nico felt something shift in his chest. Not healing, not yet, but the first fragile beginning of it. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I'm willing to try. She kissed his forehead, gentle, tender, her tears falling on his face. And for the first time in years, Nico DeLuca felt like maybe he'd found his way back to something worth dying for, which meant it was worth living for, too. 3 weeks after the bookstore, Nico was finally allowed to leave the hospital. The FBI had stationed agents outside his room the entire time, not for his protection, for theirs, making sure he didn't run, didn't disappear the way men like him always did when the walls closed in. But Nico had nowhere to run. No empire left to hide in, no soldiers to call. Just a collapsed lung that still ached with every breath and a criminal record thick enough to bury him for life. Agent Chen visited on his last day, sat in the chair Serena had occupied almost constantly for weeks. You're a lucky man, Mr. DeLuca, she said. Don't feel lucky. Tony's dead. His organization collapsed. The Russians are fighting over scraps, and you're alive. She set a folder on his lap. That's lucky. Nico opened the folder. Legal documents, plea agreements, testimony records. We don't need you anymore, Agent Chen continued. Tony kept meticulous records, ledgers, communications, names, everything we needed to dismantle what's left of your empire. He was building a case against you, insurance policy in case you ever turned on him. Ironic. Poetic, I'd say. She leaned back. But here's your problem. You're still guilty. 20 years of criminal enterprise, murder, racketeering, money laundering. We have enough to put you away for 3 lifetimes. Nico's chest tightened. So why am I not in handcuffs? Because Tony attacked you. Self-defense claim is legitimate, and you did save a federal witness. She nodded toward the door where Serena waited in the hallway. That counts for something. How much? Depends. You willing to cooperate? Forfeit your remaining assets? Testify if we need you? What's left to testify about? Corruption. Cops on your payroll, politicians, judges, the infrastructure that let you operate for 2 decades. Agent Chen's expression hardened. You don't get to walk away clean, Mr. DeLuca, but you might walk away free. Eventually. The word hung between them. Eventually. Years from now. After trials and testimony and watching everything he'd built get dissected in court. What about Serena? Nico asked quietly. What about her? She knew nothing, wasn't involved. I need that on record. It already is. We cleared her weeks ago. Agent Chen stood. She's free to go. You, however, have a decision to make. Cooperate and maybe see daylight before you're 70, or refuse and die in prison. Your choice. She left the folder and walked out. Nico sat in the hospital bed, staring at legal documents that spelled out the price of redemption in cold bureaucratic language. The door opened. Serena slipped inside. She'd gone home to shower and change. Looked almost normal now. Almost. What did she say? Serena asked. That I'm fucked, professionally speaking. How fucked? Completely. Unless I cooperate. Forfeit everything. Spend the next few years testifying against everyone I ever worked with. Serena sat on the edge of his bed. And if you do, maybe I get out someday. Maybe. Nico looked at her. But it means trials, media. Your name dragged through everything. Everyone knowing you were married to me, to what I did. I can handle it. Can you? Really? I don't know. Honest. Raw. But I'm willing to find out. Nico reached for her hand, threaded his fingers through hers. You could leave. Right now. Change your name, move somewhere new, start over completely. I'd never tell them where you went. I know. So why don't you? Serena was quiet for a long moment. Outside, rain started again. Always rain in this city. Like the sky was mourning something permanent. Because I lost a baby alone, she said finally, and I swore if I ever got a second chance at anything real, I wouldn't run from it just because it was hard. Her eyes met his. You're hard, Nico. Loving you is hard. But you're also the only man who ever made me feel like I mattered more than anything else in the world, even if you forgot that for a while. I never forgot. I just stopped showing it. I know, and that almost killed us both. She squeezed his hand. But you remembered when it mattered. You took a bullet for me. That has to mean something. It means I love you. Always have. I know that too. Serena's voice cracked. The question is whether love is enough when everything else is broken. Is it? I don't know yet. Ask me in a year. Nico almost smiled. That's fair. She leaned down, kissed him gently, carefully, like he might shatter. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. Sign the papers, cooperate, do whatever you have to do to survive this. And I'll be here. I can't promise I'll stay forever, can't promise I won't wake up one day and realize I can't do this, but I promise I'll try. That's more than I deserve. Way more, she agreed. But I'm giving it to you anyway. Don't make me regret it. I won't. You better not. 2 days later, Nico signed the cooperation agreement in a federal building in Portland while Agent Chen and 3 lawyers watched. Everything he'd built, gone. Every asset, seized. every connection severed. The empire he'd spent 20 years constructing dismantled with a signature. Serena waited outside. When Nico emerged, she stood from the bench where she'd been reading. Didn't ask how it went, could see it in his face. "It's done?" she said. "It's done." They walked out of the building together, into gray Oregon afternoon, rain threatening but not quite falling. "What happens now?" Serena asked. "Now we figure out what normal looks like." "Do you even know what normal is?" "No, do you?" "Not anymore." She took his hand. "Guess we learn together." They walked back to her apartment in silence, the tiny studio that had become Nico's entire world. No penthouses, no luxury cars, no bodyguards or criminal networks. Just books and plants and the smell of coffee brewing in a cheap machine. It should have felt like failure. Instead, it felt like coming home. The next few months were brutal in ways Nico hadn't anticipated. Not the legal proceedings. Those were tedious but straightforward. Testimony. Depositions. Court appearances where he admitted to crimes that made Serena flinch in the gallery. The brutal part was learning how to be human again. Nico had spent 20 years operating at maximum intensity. Every decision, life or death. Every conversation laced with subtext and threat. His brain was wired for violence and strategy and control. Normal life didn't work that way. Normal life was grocery shopping and paying bills and having conversations about nothing important while the world kept spinning. It was suffocating. Some days, Nico would wake up in Serena's apartment and feel the walls closing in, the domesticity choking him, his body screaming for adrenaline and danger and purpose. Those days, he'd go for long walks along the beach, mile after mile in the rain, trying to burn off the restless energy that had nowhere to go anymore. Serena understood, mostly. "You miss it," she said one night, not an accusation, just observation. They were eating dinner, pasta she'd made, wine from the corner store, everything normal and comfortable and utterly alien to who Nico had been. "Sometimes," he admitted, "the violence, the clarity, knowing exactly who I was and what I was supposed to do." Nico set down his fork. "Now I wake up and I don't know. I'm not a boss anymore, not a criminal, not anything, just some guy who used to be dangerous. You're still dangerous." "Am I? You killed 3 men to save me. That doesn't just go away because you signed papers." "Maybe it should." Serena reached across the table, took his hand. "You don't get to erase who you were, Nico. You can only decide who you become. Those are different things." "And who am I becoming?" "I don't know, but I'm here to find out." It wasn't enough. Some nights Nico would lie awake beside her feeling like a ghost haunting his own life. But it was something. 6 months after the bookstore, the first trial began. Corruption case. Dirty cops and politicians who'd taken Nico's money for years. The prosecution called him as a witness, made him detail every bribe, every favor, every throat he'd greased to keep his empire running. Serena sat in the gallery every day, listening to her husband confess to crimes that made hardened prosecutors pale. Nico couldn't look at her, couldn't face what she must be thinking. After 3 days of testimony, he came home to find her packing. His heart stopped. "You're leaving." "No." She didn't look up, just kept folding clothes into a suitcase. "We're leaving, both of us." "Where?" "I don't know, somewhere that's not here, somewhere we can breathe without everyone staring." She finally looked at him. "I can't listen to one more day of testimony. Can't sit in that courtroom and watch them dissect you. We need space." "The FBI won't." "The FBI already approved it. I called Agent Chen. As long as you show up for scheduled appearances, you can live anywhere." Serena zipped the suitcase. "So we're going, tonight, before I change my mind." "Where?" "You'll see." They drove south, out of Portland, out of Oregon, into Northern California. Serena navigated using her phone. Wouldn't tell Nico where they were going, just kept driving deeper into redwood country until civilization disappeared into forest and fog. Finally, she turned onto a dirt road, drove another mile, stopped in front of a small cabin overlooking the ocean. "What is this?" Nico asked. "My aunt's place. She died 2 years ago, left it to me and my sister. Maya never uses it." Serena climbed out of the car. "Neither did I, until now." The cabin was rustic, 1 bedroom, wood stove, no internet, no cell service, just ocean and trees and silence. It was perfect. They spent 2 weeks there. No phones, no news, no reminders of the empire or the trials or anything that existed beyond that tiny piece of coastline. Just Nico and Serena learning how to exist together without the weight of everything else crushing them. Some days they barely spoke, just sat on the porch watching waves crash against rocks, reading, existing in parallel. Other days they talked for hours about the baby they'd lost, the marriage that had died, the people they used to be before violence and neglect destroyed everything. "I used to paint you," Serena said one afternoon. They were walking along the beach, gray sand, cold water, seabirds screaming overhead. "You mentioned that before. I stopped, after the miscarriage. Couldn't look at you the same way. What changed? You did. You became someone I could see again." She picked up a piece of driftwood, studied it like it held secrets. "But I don't know if I can paint you now either. You're different, but I don't know who you are yet." "Neither do I." "That's terrifying." "Yeah." She threw the driftwood into the ocean, watched it disappear beneath the waves. "What if we can't figure it out? What if we're too broken?" "Then we're broken together," Nico said. "That's still better than being broken alone." Serena looked at him. Rain starting to fall, ocean roaring, everything cold and gray and beautiful in the way broken things sometimes are. "I want to try having another baby," she said quietly. The words hit Nico like a fist. "Serena, not now, not soon, but someday. If we make it through this, if we figure out how to be people who can raise a child without destroying them." Her voice cracked. "I want to try again." Nico pulled her close, held her while rain soaked through their clothes. "Okay? Okay? Okay, someday. If we make it through." He kissed the top of her head. "We'll try again." They stayed at the cabin for another week. Then reality intruded. Agent Chen calling Nico's emergency number. Another trial scheduled. His testimony required. They drove back to Oregon. Back to the apartment. Back to the grinding machinery of justice and consequences. But something had shifted, some fragile foundation laid during those weeks away from everything. They were building something, slowly, carefully, something that might actually survive. A year after the bookstore, Nico testified in his final trial. Racketeering. The big one. Federal prosecutors laying out 20 years of criminal enterprise in excruciating detail. Nico spent 5 days on the stand, confessing to everything, holding nothing back. When it was over, the judge looked at him with something that might have been pity or might have been contempt. "Mr. DeLuca, I've presided over organized crime cases for 30 years. I've never seen someone dismantle their own empire quite so thoroughly." The judge shuffled papers. "Your cooperation has been noted. Your remorse appears genuine, but the crimes you've committed are severe. This court cannot ignore that." Nico stood perfectly still, waiting for the hammer to fall. "However," the judge continued, "given your cooperation and the fact that you're already serving time through asset forfeiture and ongoing legal obligations, I'm sentencing you to 10 years probation. Conditions include no contact with known criminals, monthly check-ins with your probation officer, continued cooperation with ongoing investigations, and forfeiture of all remaining assets." The courtroom erupted, prosecutors objecting, media shouting questions. But Nico barely heard any of it. He'd expected prison, years locked away paying for the empire he'd built. Instead, he got probation, freedom, a second chance he didn't deserve. He looked at the gallery, found Serena. She was crying, smiling, hand over her mouth in disbelief. 10 years of probation wasn't nothing. It was a leash, restrictions, constant oversight. But it wasn't prison. It was a chance to actually live the life he'd promised her. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed, questions flying, cameras flashing. Nico ignored all of it, just pushed through to where Serena waited. She threw her arms around him, held on like he might disappear. "It's over," she whispered. "It's actually over. Not over. Just beginning." She pulled back, looked at him with red eyes and tear-stained cheeks. "What do we do now?" "Now we live, however that looks." "I don't know how." "Me neither." Nico cupped her face. But we figure it out, together. Together, she repeated. They walked away from the courthouse hand in hand while reporters shouted questions neither of them answered. Spring came slowly to the Oregon coast. The rain lightened. The gray skies cracked open occasionally to reveal blue. Trees budded. Flowers pushed through cold earth. Nico got a job. Construction work. Manual labor that left him exhausted and aching. It was the furthest thing from running an empire he could imagine. It was exactly what he needed. Serena went back to the bookstore. The owner had kept her position open. Understanding woman who asked no questions about what had happened that night or why federal agents had torn her shop apart. They fell into a rhythm. Work, dinner, quiet evenings reading or talking, weekends walking along the beach. Normal life. It still felt alien. Some days Nico would catch himself strategizing, planning, his brain defaulting to criminal patterns before he consciously redirected. But those moments came less frequently. The distance between who he'd been and who he was becoming slowly widening. One Saturday morning, Serena found him in the bookstore cafe during her shift, sitting at a small table, coffee steaming, staring at nothing. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just thinking." "About?" "The prosecutor, the one I had killed 3 years ago." Serena went still. "Nico." His name was Marcus Webb, had a wife named Jennifer, 2 daughters, Emily and Sarah, 7 and 9 years old. Nico's voice stayed flat. "I looked them up. After everything, needed to know what I'd destroyed." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I can't undo it, can't bring him back, can't make his daughters have a father again." He finally looked at her. "But I can remember, can carry it, can make sure I never forget the price other people paid for my empire." Serena sat down across from him. "That's not redemption." "I know. There is no redemption for some things, just living with what you've done." Nico reached across the table, took her hand. "But maybe that's enough. Remembering, choosing better, not because it fixes anything, but because it's the only thing left to do." "Is it enough for you?" "It has to be." They sat in silence. The bookstore slowly filling with morning customers, life happening around them. Normal, mundane, real. "I'm pregnant," Serena said quietly. Nico's world stopped. "What?" "About 6 weeks. I took 3 tests to be sure." Her hand moved to her stomach. "I wasn't going to tell you yet, but sitting here listening to you talk about carrying the weight of what you've done, I needed you to know there's weight worth carrying too." Nico couldn't breathe, couldn't process. "Are you sure?" "Yes. And I want to try, if you do." "Serena, I don't know if I can, you'll be terrified, I'll be terrified. We'll probably fuck it up in 100 different ways." She squeezed his hand. "But we'll try. Together. And maybe that's enough." Nico felt something break open in his chest. Not pain. Something else. Something that felt suspiciously like hope. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay. We try." Serena stood, came around the table, kissed him in the middle of the crowded bookstore while customers pretended not to watch. And for the first time in years, Nico DeLuca felt like maybe the future held something besides consequences and regret. Maybe it held a chance to build something real, something worth protecting with everything he had left. 6 months later, Nico stood in a small hospital room holding his daughter, 5 pounds, 8 ounces. Dark hair, eyes that hadn't decided on a color yet. Perfect. Impossible. Real. Serena lay in the hospital bed, exhausted, beautiful, alive. "What do we name her?" Nico asked. His voice cracked. He'd faced down cartels and federal agents without flinching, but this tiny human in his arms terrified him. "Hope," Serena said. "We name her Hope." "That's on the nose." "I don't care. It's what she is." Serena held out her arms. "Let me hold her." Nico carefully transferred the baby, watched Serena cradle their daughter, the woman he'd destroyed and the child who might save them both. "I'm going to fuck this up," he said quietly. "Probably. I don't know how to be a father." "Neither do most fathers. You'll learn." "What if I can't? What if I'm too broken?" Serena looked up at him. Then you'll be a broken father who tries anyway. That's still better than nothing. Nico sat on the edge of the bed, looked at his wife and daughter. This fragile family built from wreckage and violence and somehow still breathing. I love you, he said. Both of you. More than I've ever loved anything. I know. Serena's eyes were wet. Don't fuck it up this time. I won't. Promise me. I promise. It was a promise he'd probably break. Humans were fallible. Broken fathers even more so. But sitting in that hospital room while rain drummed against the windows and his daughter slept in her mother's arms, Nico DeLuca made a choice. He would try. Every single day for the rest of his life, he would try to be someone worth the love these two humans were giving him. Not because it would erase what he'd done, not because it would make him clean, but because trying was the only thing left, the only path forward that didn't end in self-destruction or running away. So he would try, and maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The years that followed weren't easy. Nico's probation was constant oversight, monthly check-ins, restrictions, random drug tests, the legal system's way of making sure he stayed on the straight path. Some months he resented it, the collar around his neck, the constant reminder that he'd never be fully free. Other months he was grateful. The structure kept him from backsliding, from answering when old associates reached out looking for the man he used to be. Work remained brutal. Construction jobs, warehouse shifts, manual labor that destroyed his body and left him too tired to think about the empire he'd lost. But it paid the bills, kept food on the table, gave him purpose beyond survival. Serena thrived. The bookstore promoted her to manager. She started painting again. Small pieces at first, ocean scenes, trees, safe subjects that didn't demand too much. Then one day Nico came home to find her painting him. Not the Mafia boss, not the killer, just him. Standing in their kitchen, making coffee. Morning light through the window. Ordinary. You see me now, she said when he noticed. I always saw you. No, you looked through me. Now you see me. There's a difference. She added shadows to the canvas. And I can finally see you too, without everything else in the way. Hope grew. Learned to walk, to talk, to ask impossible questions about where Daddy worked and why they didn't have a big house like other kids. Serena handled those conversations. Nico didn't have the words yet, but he showed up. Every recital, every parent-teacher conference, every nightmare and scraped knee and childhood crisis. He showed up. It was the smallest thing, the most basic requirement of fatherhood, but for a man who'd spent years being absent even when he was present, it was everything. Some nights Nico would sit on Hope's bed after she fell asleep, just watching her breathe, terrified that his past would somehow reach forward and destroy this innocent thing he'd helped create. She's safe, Serena would say from the doorway. You made sure of that. For now. Forever. You walked away from that life. It doesn't get to follow you. But Nico knew better. The past always followed, left scars and shadows and debts that could never be fully paid. The difference was whether you let it define you. On Hope's 5th birthday, Nico took Serena to the cemetery. Small memorial park overlooking the ocean, headstones scattered across green hills. He led her to a specific grave, simple marker, Marcus Webb, beloved husband and father. Why are we here? Serena asked quietly. Because I need to do this. Before I forget. Nico knelt, placed flowers on the grave. His daughters are 12 and 14 now. I looked them up. They're okay. Good grades. Normal lives. But they grew up without a father because of me. Nico, I can't change that. Can't bring him back. But I can make sure I remember. He stood. Every year. Hope's birthday. I come here. Remember what I took from someone else so I could have what I have now. Serena wrapped her arms around him. That's not healthy. Maybe not, but it's honest. Nico held her tight. I don't get to forget Serena. I get to live with it. Make different choices, be better. But I don't get to forget. They stood there until the sun started setting, then walked back to the car where Hope waited with Serena's sister. Life continued. Probation eventually ended. 10 years of restrictions and oversight finally lifting. Nico celebrated by doing exactly nothing different. Same job, same apartment, same quiet life. because he'd learned something during those 10 years. Freedom wasn't about having no rules. It was about choosing the right cage. And this life, this small, ordinary, beautiful life with Serena and Hope, was the cage he'd chosen. Some nights he'd dream about the empire, the power, the adrenaline, everything he'd given up. Then he'd wake up to Hope climbing into bed between them, Serena's hand finding his in the darkness, the weight of real love instead of empty control. And he'd remember why he'd walked away, not because the empire was wrong, but because it had cost him everything that mattered. One evening, 15 years after the bookstore, Nico and Serena sat on their porch watching the ocean. Hope was away at college. The apartment felt too quiet without her, but they'd survived the empty nest, found new rhythms, new reasons to wake up each day. "Do you regret it?" Serena asked, the question she'd asked a dozen times over the years, always searching for the truth beneath his words. "The empire? No." "Leaving it?" "Never." Nico took her hand. "Not once. Even when things were hard, when money was tight, when your past kept following us, especially then." He looked at her, gray touching her temples now, lines around her eyes, beautiful in ways that had nothing to do with youth. "Because hard with you is better than easy without you, every single time." Serena leaned her head on his shoulder. "We made it." "Yeah, we did. Against every odd. Somehow." They sat in silence, waves crashing, seabirds calling, the sun setting over water. Two broken people who'd somehow built something whole from the wreckage of who they'd been. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There were scars, ghosts, nights when the past rose up and reminded them of everything they'd survived. But they'd survived together. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered. Not redemption, not forgiveness, just two people choosing each other every single day despite every reason not to. That was love. Messy, complicated, built on blood and mistakes and second chances that should never have come. But real, finally real. And as the sun disappeared below the horizon and darkness claimed the coast, Nico DeLuca held his wife's hand and understood something he'd been too blind to see for most of his life. Power was nothing. Empires were temporary. Money and violence and control were illusions that crumbled the moment you looked away. But love, real love, earned through sacrifice and choice and showing up even when it hurt, that was permanent. That was everything. And he'd found it in the last place he'd expected. In a woman who'd been invisible until she disappeared. In a daughter who'd never know the monster he'd been. In a quiet life far from the empire that nearly destroyed them both. Some stories end with triumph, with villains defeated and heroes victorious. This story ended with something simpler. A man who'd been a monster learning to be human. A woman who'd been invisible finding her voice. And two broken people discovering that broken together was still worth fighting for. The ocean kept crashing against the shore. The stars came out one by one. And Nico DeLuca, former Mafia boss, killer, broken man, sat on a porch with his wife and felt something he'd thought was lost forever. Peace. Not perfect. Not clean. But real. And in the end, real was all that mattered.